Now you can hear me. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Snapcraft Live. Looking forward to doing a little session about games. Forgive my eyes darting around all over the place, just making sure that everyone can hear me and all this is working okay. Looking for a thumbs up in the chat or other, useful emoji in the chat to say this is working successfully. That looks good. So let me just close this application. Oh no, it's closed. We do these every so often, Snapcraft Live. The goal of this is to partly to have a Q&A, so you can ask questions in the chat if you watch them live. They're generally on a Wednesday at this time, subject to time zones and daylight savings and all that, but I think most of that is behind us for now. And you'll find a library of these on the Snapcraft.io YouTube channel. So if you go to youtube.com/snapcraft.io, you'll find a bunch of these videos that I've done. And they cover like getting started, how to snap applications, why you might want to publish your application in the Snap Store, and that kind of stuff, and go through some technical details of packaging software as snaps. And we've so far we've gone through at a kind of broad, high level. What I want to do today is kind of focus specifically on one category of applications, specifically games. And there's a few reasons why I want to focus on games today. One is people keep asking about it. So people do quite a lot of game development, either in their spare time or as a job, and want to publish their work for Linux users. And the Snap Store allows people to be able to do that. And some of these people have asked, how do I get my application in the Snap Store? And I wanted to kind of go through a couple of tutorials of how you might do that. And you may have seen in the thumbnail for this video, I threw a couple of game engine logos in there. There's a Unity 3D logo, and I also threw in a Godot engine. Those are the two I'm going to focus on. Unreal is a little bit hard for me to run here, so I'm only going to focus on those two. But actually, the principles for packaging a game are pretty much the same, largely irrelevant of what engine you use. So actually, you might be able to repurpose what I'm going to do with Godot and Unity. You might be able to repurpose that for another game engine. So before we start, there's just the usual matter of going through our notes for what we're going to cover to make sure I cover everything. So these are the notes. I'll be pasting these in the description underneath the video later. I've also got some templates that I'll stick in a GitHub gist. Are they gists or gists? I never know. It's GitHub. It's not GitHub. Anyway, I'll post those in GitHub gist. Tell me in the chat whether it's gist or GIF or no, the other one, GIF. And you'll be able to look through these later. But this is the goal of this week: is learn why you'd snap games, understand how to build snaps out of your games, and part of that will be setting up your machine to be able to snap your games. And then we're going to build a snap of a Godot game, and if we get time, we'll also build a snap of a Unity 3D game. I don't think we call it Unity 3D anymore. They just call it Unity. I fell into the trap of calling it Unity 3D because Ubuntu had a desktop environment called Unity. So I used to call it Unity 3D. And then we came out with a desktop called Unity 2D, which muddied things even further. So, yeah, don't fall into that trap. Choose unique names for your games. That's the agenda for what we're going to cover. So the first question is, why would you do this? Why would you package your game as a snap? And part of the reason is the ability to install snaps is baked into the most popular Linux distribution there is, which is Ubuntu. There's no getting away from it. That's the one that most people use. Yes, there are other Linux distributions, and snap support is available on many of those other Linux distributions. I think we're up to about 40 or 50 Linux distributions now. But if you want to target the most number of users, making a snap is a great thing to do because you'll hit a significant chunk of users. The other thing to note is that GNOME software, the desktop application that you use for browsing the store, has quite a focus on snaps on Ubuntu, and so you'll be easily found in that store. And part of the reason why you'll be easily found is because there's not a tremendously huge number of games in there. And so what I'm trying to get at is you won't be drowned out by all the other noise of like thousands and thousands of other games. It will be quite easy to stand out in that store. There are thousands of snaps in the store, but not all of them are games. And, you know, you may stand out with head and shoulders above some of those others. So that's why it's a good idea to do this, because it's a great way to access a huge number of Linux users, and those Linux users are often clamoring for new and interesting games. So if you package it as a snap, you know, it's a double-headed win there. So let's cover a few basics. First of all, if you want to know more about Snapcraft, go to snapcraft.io, and you can also browse the store to see, you know, what other applications you'd be featured alongside. So, you know, there are some games in the store, and you can see some of the featured games in the store. And if you drill down, you'll see lots more games in the store. But it's not a, you know, tremendously huge list, is the point I'm getting at. You could stand out in this list if you've got a good game. Another place that's worth looking is the documentation, linked from the top of the page. It says docs, and in here you can learn more about Snapcraft. So I'll give you like the high level stuff, but there's way more detail in the docs. Another useful thing, actually we'll come back to that, we'll do that one later. Another useful thing is the forum. So if you get stuck when you're making a snap, you can come to the Snapcraft forum, which is forum.snapcraft.io. And we've got loads of really cool people in there, people who work on Snapd, people who work on Snapcraft, and community people who are willing to help you get started. So, yeah, that's everything you need to know to get started. So we're going to focus, first of all, on a game made with Godot. Now, I'm not going to actually sit and make a game, because the goal is here for you as a game developer. You already have your game, or you're developing your game, so I'm not going to go through that bit. What I'm going to do is expect you to have already built your game, and you want to package it up and make it available. So that's the scenario we're going for. And so I have already done this. I have already just used one of the tutorials in Godot, and I have exported it out of Godot. I've got some screenshots to show what I did earlier, just so you can see. So in the Godot editor, it looks a bit like this. So I use this 2D platformer tutorial as an example. And one of the things to know about Godot is it's free software, which is great, open source. You can go and get Godot. It's available for Windows, Mac, and Linux. And you can build your game in this and then export it out. And it has a concept of what are called export templates. And Godot doesn't ship with those export templates. You have to download them. And so within Godot, when you try and export your game out, it says, oh, you need to go and get some templates, and it will walk you through this dialogue, take you through getting the export templates. Once you've got those export templates, you can then export your game and export a Linux binary. So this is what I'm expecting you to have already done, right? You'll have created your game in Godot, you'll have got your export template, you've made sure you've got your Linux one, you click add and it adds a Linux one, and you give it a target directory where you want to export the game out, and you basically press the export project button and you get a binary. And that's the starting point that we're going to start with right now. So I've got in my snaps folder, where I keep all of the stuff that I do with snaps, I've got that Godot game. If we look in Godot game, there's this 2D platformer directory, and these are all the files that you get as part of that game, right? That's effectively the source code of the game. And when I exported it, I put it in Godot game export. And there's the binary. In fact, let's run it. Let's go in there just to prove that it actually works, and run the game. So I run the game, and sure enough, it's a simple little demo 2D platformer game Oh, crikey, that is loud, isn't it? Yeah. I'm not very good at this, but I can't remember what the keys are. Is it Z? No. Yes, Z. Fire at the alien scum, whatever they are. Pew, 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 pew. Anyway, that's the game that we're going to snap, right? That's it. It's pretty simple, but it's just an example. The process is exactly the same for any game you export from Godot, in theory. I haven't tested every single game in Godot, but this should work for every game, right? So what we're going to do is I'm going to make a directory and call it Snap Godot Game. Should I make this a little bit bigger? Yes. And in there, we're going to use Snapcraft to build an initial YAML and then build upon that. Now, in previous videos, I've gone through the details of how you get set up in your environment. There's a little reminder that will be in this video down the bottom, which is this little bit down here. Here's the reminder. I'll paste this in the thing at the bottom. But the expectation is you already have Snapcraft installed, which you can get with sudo snap install Snapcraft. And you also have multipass installed, which is sudo snap install multipass, right? So I'm expecting you've already done that because we cover that in every single video on this channel. And so I think it's reasonable to expect you might already have that. So we're going to go Snapcraft init, and that's going to create a template YAML file. You can see it if we just cat that. It's very basic, and we're gonna well, basically replace this. But what I also want to do is take a copy of my exported game and put it in here. So I've got my Snapcraft YAML and all the bits and pieces that make the game in one place. So now here's an interesting tidbit of information. The directory that contains the Snapcraft YAML is snap. And within that, we also have a folder that's a bit special called local. And the idea of local is any files or assets that are needed for your snap, you can put in there. So if there's any scripts or images or the game itself or whatever it is you want to include in the snap, you put in local. Now, we haven't done this in any of our previous, I don't think in any of our previous videos, because all of the pieces that make up the snap have all been remote. They've all been like in a Git repository somewhere or source code somewhere else. And so we haven't used this, I don't think. So I just wanted to highlight it because it's an important point. It's somewhere that Snapcraft will expect your stuff to be. So I'm going to make a directory called snap local, and I'm going to copy my Godot game. Where did I put it? Godot game, game export, 2D platformer. That's it there. So I'm going to copy that into snap local and then create a folder called 2D platformer. Oh, is that going to work? If I put that in there, will it create a directory? No, whoops. I'll put a directory there. Platformer. There. So I've now got my snap directory with Snapcraft YAML, and I've got a snap local 2D platformer, and there's my game, right? And that's all the assets that the Godot engine spat out. Now let's modify my Snapcraft YAML. And what we need to do here is I'm going to copy and paste some bits in to save some time rather than type it all out. I've got it already made somewhere here. So what I'm going to do is do a bit of copy and pasting. And this is what you'll see in the GitHub gist when I paste it in there later. So this is the reference one, right? And we've only got a few bits to change in here. The first bit is the name of my game, which is 2D platformer. Yeah, I can type. And it's a Godot game, but I'll call it 2D platformer. Okay, a simple game made in Godot. I'm going to say confinement strict. I'm really only going to highlight the things that I'm going to change, which is not going to be a lot. Confinement strict. And the part name is called Godot Game. It could be called anything. I could call it 2D platformer. There we go. Now you'll notice here it's using the dump plugin, which means it's going to take, this part is going to take the contents of the directory specified here and dump it into the snap. So the directory I made, remember, was snap local 2D platformer. So that's all I've got to do is change it to snap local 2D platformer. Now, there's a couple more bits I need to change. Now you'll notice here there's another part here called desktop glib only. I'll come back to that. Under here we also have some stage packages. Now these are packages from the Ubuntu archive that are going to get bundled inside our snap along with the game, and they're libraries that all Godot games need in order to function correctly when they're in a snap. So you'll notice there's some things in there to do with video drivers, there's some stuff to do with audio drivers, there's stuff to do with X windows. You don't really have to worry too much about it. Just dump all of these things in and then the game will work. So I mentioned after desktop glib only, this is another part down here. Desktop glib only is a reusable part that is hosted over on GitHub, and it's a set of scripts that were created by the Ubuntu desktop team which make it easier for you to package up graphical applications, mostly desktop applications like GNOME GTK or KDE Qt applications, those kind of things. And this does a whole load of stuff that I don't really need to go into, which stands up the environment needed to successfully draw your application on the screen. So all we're saying here is dump my game into the snap and do that after you've done this part. So it will do this part first, desktop glib only. And this will build this set of stuff that wraps around the application. Finally, the bit down here is the apps stanza, and this exposes your game to the outside world. It exposes your game to the outside world outside the snap. And so this name here you will need to change and should match the name of your snap, which was 2D platformer, wasn't it? And in that you see a script, so a command that's being run. So when the user runs 2D platformer, it runs a command. And this command here called desktop launch actually comes from this desktop glib only part. So that's where that comes from. And that's the bit that does all the setting up. This is the wrapper around your game that does all the setup to make sure your game will run successfully. And then that then calls your game binary, which we dumped in this previous step down here. And the binary name, which we found with the tree command, was this thing here, 2D platformer .x8664, right? So I just plop that in there. Boom, done. That's everything you need to do. Now I'm just going to start the snap building, and then I'm going to come back here and explain a couple of other things while it's building, because it'll take a few minutes to build. So I'm just going to run Snapcraft in that directory. And this is going to use multipass to start a VM, and then it's going to start building my game. Now, it shouldn't take too long to build my game, because it has, while it has to compile this bit, this is mostly a bunch of shell scripts. And this bit is really just taking those two files, 2D platformer, the executable, and the pack file, and just dropping it in the snap. So there's not actually a huge amount of work for it to do. The thing that's going to take the most amount of time is probably it launching the VM and then going off to the internet and downloading a bunch of packages from the Ubuntu archive, because I've told it I want these packages from the archive. And so it's going to launch the VM and then start getting packages from the archive. So while it's doing that, I'll mention a couple of other things in here. This thing here is interesting. I think I've mentioned this in a previous video. Pulse Audio is a bit weird, and it puts its libraries in a strange place. And so we need this little environment bodge here, so that when the application is running, it's able to use the Pulse Audio libraries. It's just one of those things we have to do, because they're in a strange place. I don't know why. Now, the bit that's more interesting is this little bit here. I've listed here a load of plugs. These are the interfaces that get hooked up when the snap is installed. And these interfaces, bearing in mind that this application is a strictly confined snap, so it has a limited view of the world, these plugs tell the system what resources this application has access to. So, for example, OpenGL for a game, reasonable to expect that a game might want to access the OpenGL hardware in order to, paint 3D stuff on the screen. That makes sense. Network. Your application might be a single-player local game, no network capability at all, in which case you could remove that line. If your game is single-player local but goes online to get stuff, but you are never the server, then perhaps you could remove this line, because this one means that the application can bind to a socket. So if it was a multiplayer game like me on my laptop and my son on his computer over there, and we're playing over the local network, then I would need network bind if I want to be the server, and if I'm the host and he's the other player. So you would need that one. Pulse audio if it's going to play any audio. X11 to basically draw on the screen. Desktop is required for this desktop helper thing to work correctly. And joystick is useful if you have one of these, a joystick of some kind. Now, the joystick one is interesting because it's not automatically connected for some reason. Security team have decided that joysticks need to go through a manual request via the forum. I'll talk more about that afterwards. But suffice to say, if you go through this whole process and you install your game and the joystick doesn't work, don't be surprised, right? I'll come back to how you work around that a little bit later. But I just wanted to highlight the plugs that are listed in here. But that's basically it. All I've done is paste in this, and I've only ever changed a few lines to say the name of my game, the name of the game that as it's exposed to the outside world, and the name of the binary, and that's it, right? So hopefully in the terminal we now have a snap created of my game. So if I go snap install that game, now I have to use the dangerous flag as always. Oh, why can I? What? Where did it go? Something went wrong. I'm going to run that again. I don't know what went wrong there, but something went wrong. Let's run that again. While that's running, it could be because I ran this earlier and I've maybe messed it up because I was testing this earlier. So I'll just run it again. All I did there was Snapcraft clean, and that will throw away the VM. So it does a whole clean thing from the start. So that should be good. While that's running, I'll go back and have a look and see if there's any questions we should have a look at. I should mention some of my colleagues, quite a few of my colleagues are in the chat at the moment. Yes, Martin, John, Zygmunt, they all work on this kind of stuff. So say hello to them because and their answers will be more correct than mine because they work on this stuff all day, every day. So any questions that I should look at that are in the realm? Oh, that's a good point. So people are talking about some of the plugs. One of the things I haven't done and could be an embellishment to my there's already an embellishment already to my my thing here. You'll notice one of the plugs that I didn't specify that I could have specified is home. So for example, what if your game allows you to load assets like photo or something to be your avatar in the game, or to load a skin or something into the game? By default, because the the game is strictly confined, it won't have access to your home directory. It will have access to its own read-only and writable areas of disk, but it won't be able to see your home directory. So if you've got any photos or pictures or other assets that the game allows the user to import, it'll be hard for the user to import them. So if that's the case and you do have that as a feature in your game, then you might want to add the home plug. If your game allows people to import pictures, maybe also add the removable media. Removable media. I can never type that while I'm saying it. Because maybe they're loading a picture off of a USB key, or a USB key that's got an SD card in it that came from a camera or something. You know, these things could happen. So adding those as the developer of the game will enable the user to access the home directory from within the game. Maybe also if your game stores screenshots, for example, if you've got a button in the game that allows you to store screenshots somewhere, then doing this might allow them to store the screenshots in their home directory, which will be useful too. What else? So one of the questions that's come up in the chat is asking, are you building in a Bionic environment? So Bionic being Ubuntu 18.04, this laptop that I'm running on is Ubuntu 18.04. But one of the cool things about Snapcraft is if you have multipass installed, it will launch multipass and spawn the right version of Ubuntu to build in. And it uses this value up here, base. So where it says base Core 18, Core 18 is a lean runtime version of Ubuntu, which is used by all snaps. And it's based off of Ubuntu 18.04. There is an older one, which was previously called Core and could now be called Core 16, was based off Ubuntu 16.04. And as a result, the libraries that you're pulling in here using stage packages will come from the Ubuntu 18.04 or Bionic, which is the code name, archive. So that's where they come from. Now, if you had Core 16 in there, then the libraries would come from the Ubuntu 16.04 archive. Okay, so hopefully that answers the question. I can see in the chat this is being well answered by Zygmunt, who knows way more about this than I do. So, yeah, read the chat if you want the proper answer. So, is it still building? Okay, so it's building. And as you can see there, it's going off to the Ubuntu archive conveniently at the right time in order to build this snap. Let's go back. What did I say I was going to talk about that I jumped over? Joystick, that was it. So, the joystick interface is not automatically connected. And so, in the event that you create a game and you put it in the Snap Store, you probably want to allow access to joysticks, and that means like USB joysticks, Xbox 360 controllers, Steam controllers, Bluetooth ones like this thing, that kind of stuff. You want access, and this interface gives that. And so if you want that to be automatically connected, once your Snap is in the store, you go to the forum, which I've already mentioned is somewhere here. Which one? That one. Is forum.snapcraft.io. And you just start a new topic. Start a new topic and say, joystick auto connection request for game foo. Say what your game is, the name of the snap, why you want the joystick auto connection, and someone will review it and approve it. And then what will happen then is in the store, a flag will be set for your application to say automatically connect the joystick. And any user who installs your application or game from that point onwards will then have the joystick interface automatically connected. So it's a good idea to publish your game into the Edge channel to do some testing, then start the thread, get the joystick auto connected, and then once that's done, you could do a stable release to the stable channel or a beta release to the beta channel or whatever. But that's the process I would go through. Okay, we're nearly done. Any more questions in there I should look at? Someone was asking, how can we debug what a snap wants to do, what it wants to execute? Oh, that debugging. I reckon... Oh, hang on. Didn't I do a video about this? I think I did a video that was debugging. If we go to YouTube... Oh, crikey. YouTube.com, snapcraft.io. I think there's a video that I did in the recent past. My laptop is struggling a little bit. I think Martin has also posted a link in here. Look at that. Martin's posted a great link there. Copy link address, paste that in here. Yeah, I think somewhere in here I did one of these previous ones. I should change the name of these. One of these previous videos is all about debugging. But also, is this link gonna work? Yes. There we go. We've got a Snapcraft blog. Snap up your development tools for making Snaptrack easier. So look out for this blog post back in January if you want to debug the snap process. And this has got lots of detail in here about how you go about improving the whole process for creating snaps. Awesome. Thank you, Martin, for providing that link. Anyway, I've babbled enough. Hopefully my snap is now made. Yes, there it is. So I ran Snapcraft clean to clean the environment, ran Snapcraft again. So now if I do snap install my 2D platformer and dangerous, there we go, it's going to install. Now, things I haven't done, I haven't requested the joystick to be auto-connected, so that won't auto-connect. You can see it on the screen if you look carefully. It's connecting all the interfaces. Be aware my laptop is running a little bit slow because I'm streaming video at the same time, and it's not very powerful. So it's installed. If I do snap interfaces, 2D platformer, you'll see there's the list of interfaces that are automatically connected. All the ones that I listed in the YAML. Notice joystick not connected. You can manually connect it. Look, snap connect, 2D platformer, joystick. Now it is connected. So if I plugged a joystick in, I would be able to use it now. For my debugging purposes. That's how you do it without going through the store. You can just manually connect the joystick interface. So let's run it now. If I do snap run 2D platformer, that should work in theory. Oh, my poor struggling laptop. Woo! There we go. It's exactly the same game. Oh, crikey, with the same super loud sound effects. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah. It works. So, success. We have successfully built our first game. Pretty straightforward. It really was just a case. I realised I talked for a long time about this YAML, but it really was pretty much copy and paste and tweak the names of everything and maybe add a couple of interfaces. That's really it. You should be able to use this for any Godot game at all. Oh, someone asked the question about the dangerous flag, did they? So, I'm getting lots of tips. This is great. In the chat, I should be able to use something called Snap Connections. Connections, 2D platformer. Oh, look at that. It's even more pretty output. Thank you, John. I think John wrote this code. John in the chat suggested I use Snap Connections instead of Snap Interfaces. It's just a prettier way to see the interfaces and how they're all connected up. And you could see, actually, yes, this is very good because look, it shows that I manually connected that interface. That's really cool. Another question from Joseph asking, is there a difference between Snap Run and simply launching the app the normal way? Yes and no. The reason I do Snap Run and then the name of it is so it's really a muscle memory thing, but it's to enforce the fact that I'm definitely running the snap, right? What if I had a copy of 2D Platformer already installed on my system and it was in the path and I just typed 2D Platformer? It's possible it would run the other one and not the one I've just snapped. And that's a problem because actually I might think, oh, that works, and actually I'm running the wrong one. So this is just a thing that I do to make sure that I'm definitely running the one that's in the snap. Now, you could be pretty confident if you've definitely not got a binary anywhere in your system called 2D Platformer, that if you just type 2D Platformer, you're not going to go wrong. And so, in fact, you could prove that. If I just did which 2D Platformer, you can see it is actually snap bin 2D Platformer. So I can actually just do 2D Platformer. And I get exactly the same thing, right? So in answer to your question, yes, they are effectively the same thing. The only reason why I do it is to ensure that I definitely am running the snap, okay? And everyone else is answering that in the same way. It's almost like I lured you in with that by typing snap run intentionally. Right, so that's the end of that first part, which was build a snap of a Godot game. Pretty simple, right? You could reuse that same bit of YAML for any Godot game, and you could register the name of your game in the store, and then you could publish it in the store with Snapcraft. I'm not going to go over publishing in the store because I've definitely covered that in a previous episode, and so go back and watch one of the previous episodes. The description underneath the video tells you exactly what I showed you how to do and has the notes for each one, so you don't have to watch them all. You can pick and choose the right one. So yeah, that's that. Right, should we do a Unity 3D game? Now the good news is packaging up a Unity 3D game to go in the store is very similar to packaging up a Godot game. There's not a huge amount in it. Let's just go through the basics first of all, though. It's worth noting that with a Unity 3D game, when you install the Unity 3D editor, there's a tick box for enabling the export tools for Linux. And when you install Unity, I mean, you can get it from their website. You know, you get a Unity 3D, and you could download the Windows version, the Mac version, and the Linux version. And all three versions are capable of building binaries for all three versions and all the other versions that Unity 3D supports. I mean, it supports exporting to basically everything. But at the point when you install the editor, you get a bunch of options. You don't have to install every export tool. So, you know, if you're never going to build applications for, you know, the Xbox, you just don't install that part. And so the important thing to do is when you install Unity, where is it? That's the tick box you need. So I took this screenshot on a Windows machine to show that, you know, from a Windows machine, you can run Unity 3D and enable Linux build support. And you just need to tick that box if you're on something other than Linux. On Linux, I think that just magically is there. What else did I want to show you? So, as with the others, I'm going to presume that you already have Unity and you've already got a game in Unity. This is what Unity looks like on Linux. And if you go to the File menu and choose Build, you get this dialog. And here, sure enough, it says PC, Mac, and make sure you choose Linux as the target platform. And I've chosen architecture x86-64, and then you hit Build. So very similar to what you do with Godot. You know, you choose all your build settings and then it spits out a binary. So I've already done that. Again, I've just used a templated game that is provided with Unity. So again, in my Snaps folder, I've got a Unity game folder, and in here there's this Unity roguelike, and there's all the project stuff. I'm not going to load Unity on this laptop because it's just too slow on this laptop. But I did export the game out, which is here, and if we run it outside of being a snap, we'll see what it looks like. As with most Unity games, you get the little box that pops up that asks you, you know, what screen resolution and all that kind of stuff. And here's our Unity game. It's it's a little roguelike thing. It's quite cute. The tutorials on both of these game development tools are very good. Like, you can learn how to develop games in Godot and Unity very quickly with all the tutorials, and there's loads of videos on YouTube for both of these game development engines. They're brilliant. I'm terrible at this game, and the zombie will kill me very quickly. But anyway, that's the Unity 3D game. So that's the thing we want to snap. Let's do the same thing we did last time. So I'm going to make a directory called Snap Unity Game. And again, Snapcraft init, which is almost not worth doing because it creates a very empty YAML, which I'm going to replace completely anyway. But I'll do Snapcraft init. And then again, I'm going to make a directory and call it Snap Local. And what type of game was this? It was a Unity game, wasn't it? What did I call the directory? Oh, Unity Roguelike, that was it. Unity Roguelike. Thankfully, I didn't mistype that. I always type Rogue as Rouge. Right. Then we want to copy that exported game. I'm going to copy that in. My snaps Unity. Oh no, wrong thing. Unity game export. All of that into there. Boom. Oops. Oh, is it a directory? No, all of that. There we go. So, again, crikey, loads of stuff. Sorry, that just surprised me. I didn't realise there was quite so much inside that, inside the Unity folder. So yeah, look at that. Oh, crikey, alrighty. So inside Snap Local is my Unity roguelike folder, and in there is the game stuff and all the libraries that make up Unity. Golly gosh, wow, there's loads in there. And then right down the bottom is my YAML. Right, let's edit the YAML. Snapcraft YAML. Now, again, I've already done this. So, again, it's a real copy and paste that should make this a lot easier. So, I'm going to call this, what do we call it? Roguelike or something. Unity Roguelike Game. There we go. Again, I'm just changing a few fields in here. I'll call this part rogue like. That'll do. Where are the game files? We put them in a folder, didn't we? What folder did we put it? It was called Snap Local Unity Roguelike. So let's just make that Snap Local Unity Roguelike. Now, we've stumbled across our first difference. You'll notice there's quite a few more stage packages for this Unity game than there were for the Godot game. I don't know whether it's Unity has more features or builds against a whole load more things. It certainly bundles a load more libraries. You could argue it that way, or you could argue that like Godot is leaner. I don't know which way around you want to say it, but Unity requires a bunch more libraries to be staged. So again, I've gone through the effort of figuring out which ones need staging. And it's worth noting, actually, if your game pulls in things from the asset store in Unity, or like third-party middleware, it's possible that those middleware components might depend on other libraries. So, for example, I don't see liblua in there anywhere, and it's entirely possible that you might pull in some middleware that needs the liblua runtime. Maybe the game has a plugin system that allows users to, create their own mods in Lua. Maybe that would mean you'd need some additional libraries in here. But you'd have to figure that out. You'd know pretty quickly, because when you snap your game and the library is missing, it's very clear and tells you that the library is missing. And so you very quickly figure out that the library is missing. And actually, in one of the previous videos, I did go through the debugging process of how you figure out what the name of the library is. It's usually very closely related to the name of the package. Is closely related to the name of the library. So yeah, that's pretty straightforward. Now, we've used a slightly different desktop helper. Remember, for Godot YAML, we used desktop glib only. For Unity, I had to use the desktop GTK2 helper. This again, remember, is the wrapper that wraps around your game and sets up the environment for the game to run in. And I think the reason why I did this is because of that desktop thing that appears that asks you what the screen resolution and what joystick you want to use and all that kind of stuff. You know, that pop-up that appears before the Unity game? I had to use desktop GTK2 so that rendered correctly. But again, let's just paste it in and that should work. Again, down here, a couple more things I need to change. What was this called? Roguelike, wasn't it? And the name of the binary, let's just check the name of the binary. If we look in Snap, oh, you can see it's on the screen there. Look, there it is. But let's just check. Snap Local Unity Roguelike. That's what it's called. So that's the name of the binary that's going to get dumped into my Snap. And so I'll just change that to that. Now, there's another additional thing that's slightly different between Godot and Unity. Remember when I showed you the tree? All this stuff, notice all these libraries, there's loads of DLLs and things in here that Unity needs. Okay, now these are in this folder under here, underneath managed and loads of other stuff, right? It's all in a folder. Now, by default, when the snap is run, it looks in a few specific places for libraries, like those mono libraries that are used by Unity. And it won't look in that directory where those mono libraries are that I just showed you. And so we kind of need to point it at some of those places. And the way I do that is by modifying this LD library path. You remember I said earlier I have to do the thing with Pulse Audio. Well, you also have to do this with this as well. That's interesting. Plugins. Where is this plugins directory? Let's just check where that plugins directory is and make sure I get the path right. Unity roguelike data. So it's in Unity roguelike data. Let's just have a look. CD, ls snap local Unity roguelike. Right. So Unity roguelike data is the my game data. I think. Ooh, I've just pasted that incorrectly. Sorry. Boom. And I think there's plugins inside that. Whoops. Like data. Yes, there it is. Plugins. And the stuff that's critical is in that directory there, plugins. So if I go and look in there, that screen selector is a library that's needed by, you know, that pop-up box that comes up and asks you for the screen resolutions. That library is needed. And so we have to specify that path in the LD library path so that when the desktop launcher launches your game binary, it can find that library and find Pulse Audio and everything is happy, right? You don't really need to worry too much about that. It's just, you know, you need to get these names right. Otherwise, it won't be able to find the library. So that's it. I've just changed some names, changed the name of the app. I called it Roguelike, which matches the name of the application. I made sure the path was correct and the name is correct down here. I think that's everything. Right, let's try building that, shall we? So I run Snapcraft in here. Now, something else I want to introduce you to, which I haven't mentioned yet, which I will do. And it is the elephant in the room, which is game developers don't always use Linux. So, for example, take this scenario here. Game developer on a Windows laptop, and they've installed Unity, and they've added the Linux build support. What they would end up with if they exported their game out is a Linux binary, and they want to build a snap. Now, right now, it's not super straightforward to run Snapcraft on Windows. It would be nice to be able to do that, and maybe that will come very soon down the line. But at the moment, you can't easily run Snapcraft directly on a Windows host. And that includes using it in WSL, Windows Subsystem for Linux. And so if you're on a Windows host, like this person, or if you're on a Mac, and you want to be able to build a snap of a game that you exported from Unity, I would recommend you spin up a VM. And in that VM, install Ubuntu 18.04, and I would only use Ubuntu 18.04. And the reason for that is there's a special option you can use with Snapcraft. And it's not one we recommend you use on a regular basis. And it's so not recommended that I can almost never remember the name of the parameter. But the goal of this is to run Snapcraft without spinning up a VM. Because if you're on Windows and you use VirtualBox, for example, inside VirtualBox, you want to build the snap inside that Ubuntu 18.04 machine. But what you don't want it to do is launch multipass, because then you've got nested VMs. You've got multipass VM inside your VirtualBox VM. And so what you probably don't want to do is nest the VMs. You probably want to just build inside that 1804 VM. And so, in the chat, people are also recommending possible to use a Docker container. That may be possible. Yeah, that's maybe possible as well. But one of the ways you can do this is there is a parameter for Snapcraft, which is destructive mode. I think it's called destructive mode. Someone else can remind Martin, can you remind me if it's this? Now, the rationale for this existing is building snaps in continuous integration systems where the system that you're building on is going to get thrown away straight away. And so the upshot of doing this is you're building directly on the hardware, on that machine, and you're pulling in whatever libraries and PPAs and other nonsense is on that machine, which makes it a little harder to guarantee the libraries that are going to get built into the snap. When you just run Snapcraft normally, like this, it will launch multipass, and inside the multipass container it will be clean. And because the multipass container is clean, you can guarantee that what you get in there is what you expect. The 1804 libraries, no additional PPAs, no nonsense, nothing leaking from your host machine. Okay, so I would strongly recommend, if you can run Snapcraft using multipass, then do that. But if you're on a Windows machine or a Mac and you've got a VM and you can't nest the VM, then Snapcraft destructive mode. I don't type it very often, so it's not in my muscle memory. That's an option. Okay. Ideally, run it on 1804 directly. And the reason why I say run it on 1804 on an 1804 VM is, as I mentioned earlier, this Core 18 thing. Remember, Core 18 is the runtime that's based on Ubuntu 1804. So I would not run Snapcraft destructive mode on Fedora, for example, or an Arch or something else. I would only do that on a VM that is Ubuntu 1804. I wouldn't even do it on a derivative of Ubuntu 1804. I'd only do it on a clean one. And even then, I'd probably throw the VM away and make it again afterwards, just to be sure. But that's the reason why that exists, is generally for CI, generally so that you can build without having to nest VMs. But other options are available. For example, Docker might be an option. I personally don't use Docker, but that might be an option as well. Now, as a result of this snap pulling in lots more libraries and my internet connection not being super fast, it's still installing a whole bunch of libraries. While those libraries are installed and my snap is building, let's have a check and see if there's any questions. Gosh, there's loads of stuff being said in there. It's really good. Loads of chatter in there. So one of the questions in the chat is about environment variables. And there are environment variables mentioned that start Snapcraft _ something. And we generally recommend not using those. Those are really, they're kind of special experimental flags, for example. And we try to discourage their use because the behavior may change over time. There's no guarantee that environment variables you set before you run Snapcraft that are prefixed with the word Snapcraft will be the same. We don't guarantee those continue to work in different versions. Okay, so other things I could do here. One of the things I haven't done is I haven't added a desktop file and an icon. You'll notice when I was running the Godot game, I ran it from the command line, either using snap run or just typing 2D platformer. And that's okay, but normal people like to launch their applications from a menu, like some kind of launcher on their system that, you know, shows you icons for things that you do on a regular basis. Normal people use these. You know, us nerds like to use the command line, but normal people like icons. And so that's another step that I would do, and I've covered that in previous videos. But in essence, it's just a case of dropping two little files in a folder and they'll automatically be picked up by Snapcraft. And that's covered in the documentation. It's also covered in some of my previous videos, so go back and watch one of those. And someone in the chat has linked to the Docker Hub, where there is a Snapcraft Docker image, which is maintained by the Snapcraft developers. So, yep, that's another option. You could use that. Crikey, this is taking longer than I was expecting. So, the way I've done this, I've exported a game out and I've put it in a folder and run Snapcraft. Once you get into the swing of this, that YAML file is going to stay pretty much the same. And as a game developer, you're probably going to iterate on the game and work on it a little bit more, spit out a new version, and then you just run Snapcraft again, and that will build you a new snap, and then you could push it to the store with a Snapcraft push. And you could actually automate that. You could write a little script that does the Snapcraft, and then if it builds successfully, Snapcraft push up to the Edge channel in the store, and then you could ask your community or your friends to install your game from the Edge channel in the store and just confirm whether it works or not. And then when you're ready, you could push to either a beta channel or the stable channel. And once you've got your snap in the store, you'll have access to metrics, so you'll know in which countries your game is popular. You'll get some idea of how many installs there are, and you'll also get an idea of which Linux distributions people are installing your game on. You also get the opportunity, once you're in the store, for us to feature your game. So if I go back to the store page, remember when I went to the games category, you can put your game in a category, in the games category, and it will show up in this list. But you'll also notice on the front page of the store that there are a smaller number of applications and games listed. Sorry, my poor PC is struggling a little bit. These ones we select. We select a small number of quality applications to feature in this list. And so if you build your game and it's good, and it's got an icon, and it's got screenshots, or it's got a little video, and it's got description and all that kind of good stuff, then maybe we'll feature it in this list. And games and applications that get featured in this list, the number of installs goes up, always. And especially so if it's the number one featured application in GNOME software. We have written blog articles that detail how you can improve your store page, and I'm sure Martin will paste the URL to that blog post that he wrote a little while ago, and we update that periodically with details of how to improve your store page. But it's if you Google for how to make your Snap store page pop, you'll find it. It's pretty high on the Google ranking for that. But the idea is, as a game developer, you want people to play your game, and so pushing it into the store and making the store page look pretty and us featuring your game will get people playing your game. Even if it's just a demo, it might not be a full game. It could just be a demo, a few levels of your game. Joseph's pointed out, he said his game was once featured and it got him about 5,000 downloads, so it does work. Yeah, it does. This one, ASCII Patrol, I originally snapped that and then handed it over to the upstream developer. It's nothing like as complicated as a Godot or Unity 3D. Well, it kind of is. It's awesome, that game. Once you are featured in this list, you get a significant uptick in installs. So, going back to my Unity game, I would expect this to build a little bit faster on your computers because you're probably not also streaming video and stuff at the same time. But this shouldn't take too long, and then I should be able to install it. Any other questions Martin's come along with his URL to make your store page pop, and that details how to make your store page look pretty, basically. lots of conversations in there about specific issues and people discussing how to build in various ways using virtual machines. I know it may be possible to do nested virtualization in some other virtualization systems. I think maybe VMware supports this where VirtualBox doesn't. I don't know. I've never touched VMware. If that's the case, do leave a comment below so other people know that's the case. I've only ever used VirtualBox and KVM and QEMU, so I don't really know. But yeah, that would be very useful information. If you get nested VMs working, then you could just run Snapcraft inside a Linux VM, and it will start multipass and do all the necessary build stuff there. Now you can also build remotely. You could build in some kind of CI system. You could build in something like GitLab CI or Travis or something like that. And that should work as well. Snapcraft works in Travis and Circle CI too. Any other questions? Anything else I need to address, guys, that I haven't done already? I don't think so. No other questions I can see. Okay. This is taking a little longer than I was expecting. Sorry about that. Cool. So, part of the conversation going through, looking through the chat, I'm seeing links to forum posts. I strongly recommend if you get stuck at any point with Snapcraft, drop by the forum. There are people who work on Snapd, people who work on Snapcraft, myself, Martin, my colleagues. We all hang out on the forum, and we usually get a good turnaround on questions. Sometimes questions get missed and they need to be bumped, especially if they get asked on the weekend, because more people are around at their desk during the week. So you'll probably have more success posting on the weekday, but do feel free to bump. Zigger's saying we should do a video that shows how to get Snapcraft working from multipass with side VMs, not nested VMs. Ooh, that sounds interesting. He has a setup with that on his Windows laptop. Ooh, that sounds interesting. You should write that up as a documentation, Zigger. Oh my gosh, why is this taking so long? I think this might be quite a big game. So one of the there we go. I don't have to talk anymore. Okay, so that's finished building the Snap. It's a bit big, but then it is quite a big game. So let's install it. Dangerous. I'm using Dangerous because the Snap hasn't been uploaded to the store. And again, remember, I didn't. I listed joystick, but it's not auto-connected. So if this game has joystick support, that won't work until I either manually connect the joystick interface or upload it to the store and request the joystick interface to be connected. So if I do snap run roguelike, is that going to work? Let's have a look. Now, the first time it runs, it sometimes takes a little while because the desktop launcher script is doing a bit of setting up. I need to work on theme support, clearly. But it worked. I've snapped my game. Boom. Ta-da! There we go. So there's now a snap of that game, and it functions just the same with audio support and everything. And it works. Hooray! That's great. I'm not going to play that because I'm terrible at it. But it works. Success. Yeah, I'm quite happy about that. So, just to summary what we did. We built a Snap out of a Godot game. We built a Snap out of a Unity game. It was not too painful. I'm going to put the templates into GitHub gist or gist, and I'll link them in here. I'll put them in here, and so you can refer to them, and I'll paste this in the bottom of the video on YouTube. One other thing I wanted to mention, if this is the first time here, take a look at the first snap flow. It's something we've been working on, and where is it? It's actually linked directly from the front page of Snapcraft.io. If you just go to this green button here, it takes you to the first snap flow. Maybe you're not making games, maybe you're making applications, maybe you're building some other software. This first snap flow is designed to take you through building your very first snap. And so if you're experienced in making snaps, then this might not even be for you either. But maybe someone you know who is a developer and you think they might be interested in building a snap of their application. If you just point them at the Snapcraft.io homepage and tell them to click the green button, it will take them here, which takes you through a walkthrough of all the things you need to do in order to get started building your snap. And it takes you through step by step what you need to do, asks you like questions about what platform you're using, and tells you what to do to move through that process. It's also worth noting that during the working day, we have this little chat thing down in the bottom right hand corner where you can speak to a human being, and if they're available, and that's a good way to get instant advice on building your snap. It's only available on some of the pages here, but it's good if you want to get someone started from the beginning of building a snap. I hope that's been useful. So let's go back and just make sure I've covered everything I said I was going to cover. So review the tools, built a couple of snaps, we've got a couple of templates. You can reuse those templates for a Godot game or any Unity game, but because these are just binaries with a whole load of libraries and a whole load of other bits and bobs in a folder, you could use these for basically any. This is really just a pre-built application, an already compiled application. I'm using it to build games, but you could use it for almost anything. And you could use other game engines as well. So anything that spits out a binary, a Linux binary, and libraries and assets, you could do exactly what we've just done here with similar or the same templates in order to build your application. And I'd look forward to seeing some more games in the store. If you categorize it as a game and it looks good and the store page looks great, we will probably feature it. We generally feature games on a Friday, and we generally post about them on the Snapcraft.io and the Ubuntu Twitter feed on a Friday to get people ready for a bit of fun over the weekend. So we don't tend to post about them every day because there are a lot of applications that arrive in the Snap store, and we only tend to post on social media a few times a week. But Fridays are generally game day. So get it in before a Friday, and maybe we'll feature it. So I hope that's been useful. Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you for all the questions, and thank you to my colleagues for answering all those questions. I haven't had to do any work in the chat really, because John and Zygmunt and Martin and people from the community there as well is really awesome. So thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you at the next one of these Snapcraft lives. Feel free to subscribe to the channel, and if you hit the little bell, then you'll get notified when we're going to go live again. We try and tweet about it as well, so follow us on social media, Snapcraft.io on Facebook and on Twitter and on Mastodon. It's Snapcraft.io at ubuntu.social, and maybe I'll see you another time. Do leave us a comment, let us know if these are enjoyable, and let us know if there's anything you'd like us to cover another time. Thanks everyone, I'll see you again next time. Take care everyone, bye bye.